Hello everyone, with chapter 2 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex now released, we finally get to see more of Boruto's arsenal and just what he's been training for. Before that, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share if you enjoyed the content and want more. Now before we get into what this new ability or Rasengan or tech actually is, let's look at this statement. It's made basically alongside it being actually shown to us and just before the chapter ends. Code believes Boruto is using a normal Rasengan, but we only get vague swirls around Boruto, followed by him saying Rasengan Uzuhiko. On this same page, the final page, it also states that, shunned by his hometown and is now being chased, what kind of new power did Boruto gain in the midst of it all? Now this doesn't really give us much to talk about, but it does give us something, and that is the definition of Uzuhiko and what we visually see happening on panel. Starting with Uzuhiko, if we look at what Uzuhiko actually means, it means a multitude of things, but only one becomes apparent when we actually look at the context of which it appears and how it appears visually. I'll still give you all of the interpretations. Now firstly, it can mean space, universe, roof, house, or swirling lad. I'm not going to give you the out of their interpretations or out of their definitions because they don't at all relate to Boruto or the context of the move, or at least they don't in my opinion. Well, actually I'll just give it to you. It means spirit or intelligence. I don't think we can gain anything from either of those, but if you were wondering, those are them. Now the two that automatically become the most likely to me is space / universe or swirling lad. One, because of course Karma and Otsutsuki, which Boruto is, have a lot to do with creating dimensions or traveling through space. We see Kaguya comes from the stars, as they say, or another dimension. Momoshiki travels throughout space, Urashiki travels throughout space. They are basically space pirates. They go around planting seeds that basically implode the earth or drain it of all its energy and genetic information to constantly upgrade themselves and transcend the third dimension. They are from space and they ultimately return to space. But what makes almost equally as sense is swirling lad, which what giving the Rasengan is actually a wind technique. It's mostly associated with how it swirls around and the chakra is a big spiral. Swirling lad makes equally as much sense as space or universe. Now if we were to go with the swirling lad meaning, it becomes way more likely because we see that he gains kind of vague wind swirls around his arm, hand, and shoulder area. This kind of pays homage to the Chidori Nagashi or the Chidori Stream that Sasuke used in the beginning of part 2 or Naruto Shippuden, the one that he basically used when he fought Team 7. It makes a bunch of web-like Chidori lightning strings around him that shocks and discards any of his opponents. It can even break through the wood style, which is kind of just an AP feat to show how cracked the lightning is, but it goes in 360-degree radius. It's almost like a thunderstorm made on Sasuke's body. And given how Sasuke is the one who trained Boruto, as they both left with each other at the end of chapter 80, and he's kind of been taking care of Boruto because that's what Sarada did, him having this pseudo Rasengan stream that Sasuke did at the beginning of part 2 makes a bunch of sense. Now, of course, his wouldn't be a thunderstorm on his body. It would more or less be a bit of a hurricane or tornado probably that acts as a defensive shield that probably attacks simultaneously that you can't bypass, but it also hits you back. Think of it kind of like a hurricane as a shield. And knowing how wind mostly primarily cuts stuff, like as we see in part 2 and part 1 of Naruto, it just rips to shreds anything it goes through. Even Asuma, when he's using his chakra blades to kind of, Naruto has to mimic that for his wind Rasen Shuriken training. It can rip straight through trees, grounds, and opponents. So this being a attack that kind of similarly works to this wind style applications that we see multiple times with people like Temari, Naruto, and Asuma in part 2 would make the most sense. And getting back to the barrier, if it was some kind of shinjutsu or maybe natural thing that Boruto does, I could see it being very useful versus Kawaki because as we know, he can pretty much shrink anything that's not alive. So if it was this wind barrier, I would be kind of open to see if Kawaki can shrink this and if this would just be useless if Boruto was to fight Kawaki. He's fighting Code next chapter and Code doesn't have anything of the sort. So we kind of don't have to worry about that, but that's just a little food for thought. Now, one that I've also seen people say is it will kind of work like Gojo's Infinity works within Jujutsu Kaisen. If you don't know, basically it's however close you get to Gojo, you can never touch him because he slows you down so much. It's almost like there's a barrier or infinite distance in between you guys. My only issue with this is that would be a little too broken. I don't even understand how he would use just basic wind style or Rasengan to come to that conclusion. But that is one of the fan theories. It's a around the minority of what people think, but I thought I would just include it in this video as one of the possible ways it could work. Not to completely write it out, but to just tell you that I don't think it's very likely. Now, going back to the universe or space meaning of like what the word or Rasengan, this new type of Rasengan could be, I don't really see too many interpretations we can go with this one. I mean, in one of the translations of the chapter, it does say this is a power beyond karma. So if it truly is, then maybe it allows him to control some celestial force, kind of like Omnipotence did for Ada, but not as, of course, not as broken as Omnipotence because he doesn't have Shibai shell. He doesn't have Shibai cells. It's kind of, he still has a fodder Otsutsuki cell, one who isn't transcended, one who isn't very that much godlike, such as Shibai. So it would be a Omnipotence-esque ability, but not wish granting, right? It would probably be akin to moving or taking control of celestial force or energy in the form of a Rasengan that basically cloaks or wraps around your body. Now, how this will be used in combat, I don't really know, but that's pretty much the only route or the one of two routes that I see it going if we go with the space or universe definition. Now, the space or universe definition could just be talking about how powerful it is, which for you crossverse people is kind of a big win because it'll be like, oh, Boruto is now like way past the level of Kage or Momoshiki or Naruto. But as far as its use inverse, I don't think Boruto would want to destroy the planet that he lives on, which is the reason he's trying to stop the Ten Tails. So him having a universal or complete control of space ability, he would probably have to use an extremely small AoE to not just destroy everything around him, which he does seem to be doing with it just cloaked around his body. I don't think it's going to be him controlling the entire universe. Maybe it would be something akin to how they have control over portals just inherently. Even Otsutsuki without Rinnegan, like Ishiki and Kenshiki, can make their own dimensional portals and they can trap people in them and traverse to different spaces and universes, just like how Kaguya did within Naruto Shippuden. Maybe he combines that with the Rasengan and kind of makes this BFR ability or Kamui-esque ability. That would be kind of cool, and I'll find that way more likely than him having control over the entire universe, just because, you know, destroying the planet would kind of get rid of his entire goal of trying to switch around the life swap that Kawaki did. Now, this one I'm going to get into, I don't really think is as likely or unlikely as the other ones. This is just my personal theory, as I think he kind of trained to fight Kawaki. And of course, Code is a worrisome villain. Like, yeah, Code's chasing Boruto. Boruto's been running from him for like 2 years or so. But he is just most likely training for the final big bad that we see within the flash forward, Kawaki. And we know Kawaki can basically cancel techniques with his Ishiki dojutsu, right? He can absorb things with his karma, and he can just shrink things out of existence, like with his Rasengan, and store them into a time-stop dimension. So if Boruto was to come up to him with a sword, a Rasengan, or anything, he would just pretty much be able to shrink it just at a glance. So this ability would have to be something that kind of counters that. Maybe it's not able to be shrunk because it's like him putting life force into it, or a natural Shinjutsu-esque ability. Or maybe it just bypasses and cancels ability and dojutsu abilities entirely. I wouldn't find that too broken because, like I said, Kawaki has ability that pretty much negates all of ninjutsu and Code's claw marks. So even though that's probably not what it's going to be, I would like to see it. That will make him versus Kawaki a much more interesting fight. And I think it'll be easier, much more easier to write and explain than Kawaki's just not shrinking his technique. With that being said though, this would also have to be a technique that aids in his newfound kenjutsu or swordsmanship, because we know from this chapter that he likes to use his sword a lot. He pretty much always has his hand on the hilt, and he's defeating a bunch of Jubi clones with it, right? I'm assuming he's gonna fight Code with it as well. I mean, he learned from Sasuke for a reason. So if he was able to incorporate these swirls or this Rasengan Uzuhiko onto his sword and blade and make it far more deadly and have far more range of attacks, especially when fighting multiple enemies, I think that would be a huge W for Boruto as well. I think we kind of see that within the chapter, because when he's fighting all of the Jubi clones, yeah, it could just be an artistic choice to show like his swiftness and how his strikes are very fast and quick and deadly, but he also has wind swirls around every time he slashes the Jubi clones. And he even throws out one slash and it goes into a complete 360 AoE. Now that could just be, again, artistic design or artistic choice, but I think that was a bit of an Easter egg to the Rasengan Uzuhiko. Now on to how powerful this technique should be in universe, because we know that whatever training Boruto did, yeah, his physicals are greatly increased, you know, he's way stronger, way faster, But how cocky Boruto seems, it seems that he can one-shot or beat up very easily this above Jigen level threat. Which, if you compare it to how he was within part 1, I mean, yeah, he was way younger in part 1. He didn't have nearly as much experience. He was still struggling with these Jigen or Ishiki-esque opponents, right? So Kawaki and Naruto and Code and all of them, they all have statements revolving around how they fare against each other. And Boruto was still having trouble with all of them. But now this person way stronger than Jigen, who now even has a 10 tails at his disposal, along with a 10 tails Rasengan, he seemingly could beat him up and just destroy him with this one technique. It's almost insane the amount of growth that we've seen with Boruto. And it makes a lot of sense. Boruto has always had potential, alongside him becoming basically a god or a Otsutsuki after the Kawaki or battle with Kawaki, then being trained by one of the strongest shinobi alive, Sasuke. It just perfectly pans out why he is one of, if not the strongest in the verse as we speak. And no, this isn't counting Shibai, because Shibai technically is not within the verse right now. He's in a whole entirely different realm. Right? We don't know how Boruto fares up against Damon or Ida either. We don't know how strong he is exactly, but seemingly as it stands this chapter, he could beat up Code, a way stronger than Jigen level opponent, very easily. Damon did at the end of Boruto tell him to get far stronger, and so he can actually give him a tough fight. Boruto at first didn't really believe in himself. He was like, well, I can never surpass you, right? But now I would like to see Damon versus Boruto. It just seems like it would be a good battle. Also, with Boruto having this new technique, I'm hoping Kawaki doesn't just only have Ishiki's full dojutsu now. Hoping he showcases a lot more abilities, because if Boruto is just dog stomping Code like this in base, low difficulty, Kawaki, he needs more to the table, right? Boruto has an entirely new jutsu. Kawaki just needs to awaken or use more of the powers that we didn't see Ishiki use. He already has access to the time stop dimension, so maybe he can try to seal Boruto in something like that. But that's highly unlikely, given how Boruto could probably just unseal himself, since he does have access to dimensions. And being a 100% Otsutsuki, or just how strong he is now, he probably is able to resist the time stop, because Boruto himself already has time stop-esque abilities and has already moved in time stop before. With that being said, I'm kind of interested to know who y'all think is the strongest of the Karma trio right now. Do you think it's Code? Do you think it's Boruto? Do you think it's Kawaki? I know a lot of people hate the feat of the Jubi clone with the Rasengan, the superior Jubi clone kind of smashing Kawaki's face into the ground. But whatever, he was in base, so it doesn't really matter. In their full Karma transformations, utilizing their full potential of their techniques, who do you guys think is stronger? Tell me in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and goodbye.